Hello, and welcome back to Bearcats Mean Business. My name is Grant Freaking, Manager of College Communications and Marketing at the Carl H. Lindner College of Business. 2 years ago, I wrote a two-part series for business.uc.edu looking at mental health among college students, with current Lindner students walking me through their own experiences. Study after study indicated that students were increasingly anxious, depressed, and experiencing at least one mental health issue. At Lindner, we strive for a culture of understanding to alert affected students to the resources available to them within the college and UC at large. With fall semester exams fast approaching, it's an appropriate time to revisit this topic. Today, I'm joined by Dr. LaSondra Wayne, Lindner's embedded clinician, who works with UC's Counseling and Psychological Services, better known as CAPS. Welcome, LaSondra.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Now, LaSondra, you've been embedded at Lindner for over a year now. What does it mean to be an embedded clinician, and what have you learned about Lindner students so far?
What it means to be an embedded clinician is that the University of Cincinnati, in partnership with CAPS, has actually placed a therapist or a mental health provider within the college. So in addition to having main CAPS available to students, now I want to say about 13 of the colleges have an embedded counselor who is there to specifically provide support to the students in that college.
So, LaSondra, what about more about your professional background and specifically your experience in working with patients of all different ages and backgrounds and that sort of thing?
So my background is quite diverse. I have worked with families, with family preservation. I have worked with the child welfare system as an investigator of abuse and neglect. I have worked in substance abuse recovery capacity.
Okay.
I've also worked in a shelter setting with survivors of domestic assault and sexual assault.
And can you tell the audience a little bit more about your background and why you enjoy working with students so much?
I started out in education, actually.
Okay.
And so once upon a time, I wanted to be a teacher. And that sort of kind of led me to psychology in a roundabout way, because once I was working with students, I realized that there were other, underlying things that was also impacting their learning. So being an embedded counselor in a college, like higher education setting, it sort of marries those two things for me. But what I love about working with the college population in particular is that they're full of life, youth, and possibility. They're innovative, they're learning really cutting edge things, in terms of business and things like that. And so they just have that drive and that energy that comes with youth, and that hope still that comes with youth, I think.
They're a little less jaded than you and I.
Yeah,
We've
exactly.
been on the railroad a little bit too long, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's great to hear. Now let's turn to the coming exam week, which is obviously a stressful time for all students on this campus. In your experience, what physical, emotional, and maybe even some mental indicators do students feeling the strain of exam week exhibit?
So obviously we know every student is different, and so it can vary, but some of the common things that I notice is students maybe aren't sleeping as well, they're not eating as they should, not eating balanced. They are oftentimes isolating themselves because they're studying and they're just not having a social life at all. And so they're really just high anxiety in terms of trying to just make that grade, get the grade. And oftentimes, if I'm working with a student who, let's say, has a scholarship on the line, that can be really, really stressful because they have to have a certain GPA to maintain that scholarship. So you hear the stress. They're just like, I have to get
the pressure.
I have to get the grade. I have to make that GPA. So yeah, there's just a lot of pressure.
Feeling the burden of not only living up to the scholarship, but also feeling the burden that perhaps they're placing on themselves because of their family, things like that.
For sure. So there will even be mood changes, irritability, sadness, all kinds of things that you do see when they're kind of in crunch time.
Those dreaded all-nighters too, I'm sure, for a lot of our students. Yeah. What are some of the common words or phrases that students use to describe how they're feeling when you meet with them?
Oftentimes students are basically like, I'm swamped, I'm overwhelmed, this is too much, I don't have enough time. Or they'll say things like, it's hard to focus, or everybody else understands, everybody else gets it, I still don't know, things like that. And just always feeling or saying things like, it has to be perfect, A
lot of undue pressure they put
Absolutely.
on themselves, to perform, which is a lot of probably not healthy thoughts, and maybe some spiraling when it comes to that. Now, we have some international students, not just some, a significant number of international students here at Lindner. What differences, if any, have you noticed in regard to supporting their needs or concerns?
In terms of our international students, I think it's important to note that they are not a monolith. And so even, let's say, look at our Indian students, which is a good portion of our student population
Sure.
here. India has multiple states, multiple languages, multiple cultures, and so we have to take that into consideration. And so, and even within a particular group, their families are different and things like that. So, but speaking generally, being an international student typically comes with having to adjust to some things that our domestic students just don't have to adjust to. So they are in unfamiliar environment.
24/7 in a unfamiliar environment, not just in this building, but outside these walls.
Exactly. So in addition to them navigating academics like all of our students, they're also trying to figure out just our transportation system and getting to the doctors and, just some of the things that we take for granted as, folks who are just from here. Even just the cultural idioms and, stuff like that. They're just like, what does that mean when someone says,
The peculiarness of the English language.
Absolutely. And so, they're wanting to make friends like everybody else, and they don't, always know the social cues and stuff like that. So.
Yeah, and how could they, right? They didn't grow up here, and probably put a lot. There's the academic pressure for them of coming across the world to perform in this building, but then they also put the social pressure on themselves to sort of fit in and make friends and hope maybe if they want to stay here or not. But that's a lot of pressure they put on themselves.
For sure. And then they're also concerned about their visa status and, that sort of thing. So it's a lot.
I think it's important to note that everyone, and I mean everyone, goes through varying stages of physical, mental, or emotional struggle. Feeling down or anxious, or whatever word you want to use to describe your mood, it's all normal. And these feelings are not limited to a specific age, gender, race, ethnicity, or social standing.
That's true. I will say it's important to understand that our mental wellness is on a continuum, and depending on what's going on in our lives, where we are, that's going to vary. And then sometimes we are doing fairly well, and then something will just happen that can be life-changing. We can experience a loss or, a major transition that can definitely impact one's mental health, right in terms of like having an acute crisis, perhaps.
Sure. And you've mentioned to me before that even positive changes can bring about some level of stress.
Absolutely.
You get a promotion, or if you're a student, perhaps you become president of your club. What's a great thing, but it also can bring about more stress in your life.
Absolutely. Even being close to graduation can be really, really stressful.
At the onset of everything you've ever worked for is still an amount of stress that you have to work through and build some resilience and grit, right?
Exactly.
What are some common stigmas or barriers to treatment that you encounter in your work?
Again, that depends on the culture, the person, the individual, their family life, and the meanings and, messages that they've gotten about mental health. But I would say commonly, sometimes students are feeling like their issues aren't that serious. Like, why do I need to talk to somebody? I'm overreacting, that sort of thing. There's a lot of stigma around just asking for help, or even, telling someone your business. That's a big one for some people. If they've grown up keeping family business within the family to, talk to somebody that you don't know all that well about very intimate things that are happening in your life can be challenging. There's stigma associated with being male and needing support, or being, of a particular ethnicity and needing support. It can be generationally. Sometimes, parents are like, well, when I was your age, we didn't deal with depression, or that wasn't a thing. And so what's wrong with your generation?
Make them feel a little guilty about being themselves.
Exactly.
Right?
Or just not even wanting to. Sometimes people are afraid of who might find out that they're getting support. Is my professor going to know, or is my advisor going to know? And so we always emphasize that our services are confidential. So that could be a barrier to them getting help.
Right. And if they've never received anything in this type of realm before about meeting with someone like you, they may not, I think I may have assumed that this was probably confidential, but that may not be true of all students that come in, especially ones who may not be used to this sort of ecosystem, maybe new to Cincinnati or Ohio, or the whole experience. May not assume, they could assume this trickles out and I could be in trouble for this, as you mentioned.
Exactly.
Right. So what sort of resources are available at Lindner and UC for students with mental health needs?
I'll start with just what I typically am able to offer, which is individual therapy. We also have a wellness group here for international students that's actually open to all UC students. It's just housed here at Lindner. I do various outreaches. We offer QPR, which is suicide prevention training for faculty, staff, and students. We do crisis response. Maybe there is a loss that occurs within our community here at Lindner. We can offer support to classrooms. Oh, and I also offer consultation to faculty and staff. So even though my services are specifically directed towards students, there may be a student concern that comes up. And so a faculty member may reach out to me and ask for some consultation around how to handle a student concern, and I can offer that to them.
Sure. What about the Let's Talk sessions? Because I've heard, I've seen some advertisement, not only in our building, but through some of your work too. What is Let's Talk?
So Let's Talk actually is not technically therapy. It's our brief consultations that students can sign up for through bookings. They can go to the CAPS website and literally schedule themselves for a 20-minute consultation. So let's say they just got a poor grade and they're struggling with the outcome. They can set that up, and we offer Let's Talk in person as well as virtually. Now, mine specifically are 100% virtual, but I am a part of a larger team at Main Caps, and and so they don't necessarily have to see me. They can see anyone on our team who offers it, or their schedule coincides with the student's availability.
Cool. And what about free or low-cost resources for students? I think includes some of the things you just mentioned.
So yes, Let's Talk is free. We also have free case management for students. But in terms of our therapy, the rapid access consultation or our single sessions are always free. Our groups are completely free. And our individual therapy, the first 3 sessions are free as well. But in terms of making it more accessible to students and removing the barriers, we also offer we can waive fees depending on, what is their presenting issue. Like, for instance, students who receive Pell Grants don't have to pay, or students who have experienced gender-based violence and are part of our Arise program, they don't have to pay. So, and then sometimes just students don't have it, and we can work with them and either significantly reduce the cost or waive those costs.
Excellent. That's so refreshing to hear. Yeah, I knew about it, but it's another thing just to hear it from the expert that it's, there's so many free and great resources available to students. And so how can students schedule an appointment with you in CAPS?
Okay, so what they can do is call the main office. On the back of every Bearcat ID. That's faculty, staff, and students. The CAPS number is there. So they call that number and they will reach our front desk administrative staff who has access to all of our schedules, and they can be scheduled at, my next availability. We don't have a wait list for students, so sometimes people, traditionally have to wait weeks sometimes to see a therapist, but because of our single session model, we can see students within 24 to 48 hours usually.
Right on. And that number is 513-556-0648. I'll say it again at the outro, but that's 513-556-0648 for any student that needs to meet with a counselor. Now let's end with some really positive news that just is almost breaking news, I think. UC recently received a grant from the Ohio Department of Higher Education that allows us to offer mental health funding through June 2025. What more can you say about this development, and what exactly does it mean?
Mm-hmm. I'm really excited about this. So what that means is that we have even more of an opportunity to remove the barriers. So sometimes students, even with all of the resources that are available, they may still be left with a bill. Perhaps they are taking a medication and they have to pay for it monthly, or, they got some assessment done and even the copay is still outside of their reach. And so we can provide up to, with this money, up to $2,500 per student to take care of some of those costs. And that can even include transportation to appointments or childcare even to get, therapy and things like that.
My thanks to Dr. LaSondra Wayne for joining me on this episode of Bearcats Mean Business. To contact CAPS, please call 513-556-0648. That's 513-556-0648. Contact information can also be found on the back of your Bearcat ID card. If you are in need of emergency medical attention, please call 911. Please subscribe, rate, and review Bearcats Mean Business on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Thanks for tuning in. Go Bearcats.